Aloha, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. My name is Sprinklebeard. Today, we are going to be talking about mages, and we're going to talk about one that can underperform on accounts. So we're going to jump right into Osiren, the Queen's Soulmancer. Osiren is a champion design-wise. I love it. In this game, they have gone for an undead Egyptian motif for like their necromancers, and I am absolutely here for it. It is a brilliant look. His design, he looks badass, right? He looks very pharaoh-like, very Egyptian, has these two giant reaping scythes. With that being said, we're going to talk about some of his stats in general. His attack is fine. He has a normal attack for a lot of our mages in the epic category. The giant shortcoming he has a very slow attack speed of 5, and he is unaffected by attack speed. So understand, there is no giving him attack speed to offset this interval. However, as we discuss his kit, we're going to see why there is not an increase to his attack speed. And it does make sense, but understand this is going to be one of the more difficult things about using Osiren. Now, in terms of advantages that Osiren has, he does have some of the best AoE out of the epics. Now, what I mean by this is he is not limited to the number of targets he hits. When he deals his damage, it hits everything in range. So for that, Osiren is great. In here, we can see that it says multi-target attack and execution. Osiren is meant to kill off all the vermin of the enemy team, not necessarily be this big upfront damage source. So let's talk about his skills and awakenings, and then we'll move on to the best places to use him and how to help his synergy if you want to make the most out of Osiren. So when attacking, creates a ground effect area that deals 25% damage, 25% AoE damage per second to multiple enemies for 5 seconds. Airborne units take half the damage. Attack speed bonuses do not affect his basic attack. His passive is then deals 30% extra damage to targets below 50% HP. This does feel very good, and I'm like, there's no scaling on his basic attack. Here, the extra damage does scale, so it's the extra damage that he's dealing goes from 30% to additional 50% damage to enemies below 50% HP. So as the enemy's life starts dwindling, he just starts eliminating all the trash mobs very, very quickly. His ultimate is then deals 50% AoE damage to targets in a large ground area effect ahead of him per second for up to 10 seconds. Airborne units again take half the damage from this. Upgrading him does reduce the initial skill cost by 100, so it takes it down to 800. We do get a damage increase, increasing this from 50% to 60%. And then his initial rage goes up from 300 to 400, meaning you'll get to that first ult faster. Awakenings. So the ground effect area created with basic attacks deals an extra 10% damage. So the base was 25. It now goes up to 35, and then if his passive activates, you would go from that 35 to 70% damage, or I guess I don't know if it's actually if it's additive or multiplicative, but it could, like, if it was additive, it would take you from 35 up to 85% damage, which would feel amazing. But if it's multiplicative, it would be that 70%. Awakening 2 is attack plus 5%. Killing an enemy restores 25 rage. So again, his total rage, if you fully skill dust him out, is 800. So for every time he kills an enemy, he is getting 1/32 of all of his max rage back. What is 1/32? Calculator. It is 3% of his rage back every kill, right? So that's pretty decent. Cost -2. So one of the biggest problems with Osiren, one of the things that will hold back a lot of players from wanting to use him, is his cost at 25 is the second highest cost that I'm aware of in the game. The highest cost is Titus, who we just reviewed the other day. His cost being 25 does mean that he is an enormous cost. However, he does do good AoE damage. I am going to re-gear him real quick before I show him off in levels, so that people get to see what his damage is truly capable of, because right now I kind of have him soft geared up. I have gear on him, but it's not enough to make him do immense damage. Lastly, his Awakening 5 is where I'm most curious about with Osiren. I have not gotten him to Awakening 5 on this account. Right now we're at Awakening 3, and at Awakening 3 he is feeling good. He's not feeling amazing though. Killing an enemy has a 10% chance to trigger a basic attack. With the amount of enemies that he's consistently hitting, he is definitely going to be doing the final blow, like an execution, on one of those enemies. So if you were to gear him up, or if you got him early on your account, there are plenty of places to use him. He's not bad. He does require a little bit of setup though. You might have to play with a defender or a fighter to really help Osiren shine the way that other mages will more directly shine up front. But him being able to trigger an extra basic attack, if he was able to attack twice, right? He has those two sides. If he threw out both sides, that would be a huge buff to him. If his attacks would slow, I think that would make him ridiculously good. I think that would take him from being a low tier champion to a high tier champion really fast. I think if he poisoned enemies would be very thematic for him. And you'll see as we play with him, any of these things would be an amazing effect to give him. I do think though that some of these effects could break him. So like if I was to give him a slow, it would be only like a 25% slow. Maybe 50 at max, like dusting or awakening. One of his awakenings would be like, oh, he gains an additional 25% slow. That would be massive for him. But yeah, let's talk about where he can be best used at. So Osiren is a mage where his damage isn't up front, so using him can be a little bit more difficult. So some of the areas that I'm going to suggest him in, understand that there is the caveat that Osiren can be used here. He is a good AoE mage. And if we compare him to somebody like Volus, which is going to be the fair comparison here, is that Osiren, in terms of stats, right, we have this nearly 3,600 attack. He's got a very good attack stat behind him. However, his cost being 25 and his very slow attack interval, if we compare this to a champion like Volus, that when we 6-star him, Volus only has that 2,600, so nearly 1,000 less than Osiren, but his attack speed is over double. So Volus is going to have a lot more of this upfront damage, throwing out lightning bolts that are doing 100% damage. I use air quotes because we don't actually know the numbers. It just says deals magic damage to an enemy and it bounces. So we don't know the exact number on it. Because he's a rare champion, it could only be like 70%. We just don't know. I don't have a way to data mine. I don't have an accurate way for me to test out what I think the damage is. Understand though that Volus's damage is up front, and when we start off the game playing with Volus, that can absolutely skew how we view other champions like Nasalt, like Osiren, when their damage is a lot more backloaded. But with that being said, let's equip Osiren real quick with some better gear, and then we will we'll go through a level or two and show off what he's capable of. Would I use Osiren in the arena? Honestly, no. I would find it very difficult to justify using him in the arena. There is the AoE arena, which is where Osiren should shine at. So if you have a slow effect like Mary or Aeon, who has the debuffs in her kit, I do think that Osiren could be best used in those locations. However, I don't think that that will make him look his best. Even against the single target, heavily armored enemies that appear in the arena, so he would have the advantage against them, I don't think that would be the best place for him, unless you have somebody like Wrath or Salazar that could hold the enemy in place long enough for Osiren to get off his damage to its full extent reliably. And for some of the arena strategies, there is a strategy where you place as many of your minions, as many of your champions near the summoning portal as possible. So if you were able to do that with your Wrath, if you have him 5-star awakened, you could put Wrath down right there in front, like near the portal, and then summon Osiren out second to potentially make him his best. I don't think the arena is the best place for him. Things like Void Rift, I do think are a good place for Osiren, and then a bunch of the raids are a good place for Osiren. The campaign, he is very usable in the campaign, but again, definitely pair him with somebody like Rex that can hold things in place for him or block the path so that Osiren can focus fire his scythe in that location. With that being said, I'm going to go into promotion raid to show off his skill, because right now I keep kind of talking about in theory. This is definitely where I think showing him off
All has gone cold.
will be best. Now on this account, you can see that I do have him 6-starred, fully promoted. I have him fully dusted, and he got awakened 3 times. The reason that I have him 6-star on this account is that I was struggling with mages. I only had Comet, and I needed another mage for Gear Raid 1, and Osiren absolutely performed well in Gear Raid 1. I was goofing off last time in here, so I need to remember. I don't remember who has gear on them. Game? What the heck is going on?
Let the frivolity begin.
Okay, you should be enough.
Scream for me, won't you?
Why do I have an Edro in here? That's weird. But so this 25 cost, as you can see, we are having a hard time getting to it. So I do recommend champions like Narvi or Dallin. Narvi is a little rare dwarf. Dallin is a epic redhead with 2 swords, I believe.
I shall send the undeserving to the void.
So here we're going to have his attack go off. So he throws out his scythe, and as you can see, it deals damage over time. And here, with good gear on, he is doing enough damage, right? 35,000 on a crit. He is doing enough damage that he becomes reliable. We'll put the salt down there.
A sacrifice for his old science.
With this being said, is this like the best place for him? Yes, this is our mage promotion raid. And as you can see, with excellent gear on, he can kill even the big shield enemies reliably, you know, very quickly. With that being said, though, a lot of these enemies are getting dangerously close to passing, and I have some of my best gear, probably my best gear on this account, here for him. And this is also why attack speed does not affect him. It also seems like his scythe has an impact damage, which I wasn't thinking about. Maybe not. I feel like when he first throws out his scythe, it's hitting for double. But here you can see that Osiren can easily handle the top. Here's his ultimate. Now, during his ultimate, he cannot attack because he's kind of like channeling what's that void rift in front of him. However, something that you can do to make the most out of him is you can wait for him to throw out his scythe and then ultimate immediately afterwards. So here we can see, as the waves are coming, having a defender here is absolutely going to make these puddles of damage feel absolutely amazing, and he's already gotten his ultimate back very quickly. So to make the most out of his ultimate is, so there he threw his scythe. I could then use the Void Rift immediately afterwards. And as you can see, he deals plenty of damage when maxed out, when 6-starred, when promoted, when given some of your best gear. With this also being said, I would say that he's also one of the easiest champions in the game for you to build. Because he does not require attack speed, this lets us focus on primarily attack percentage, crit rate, crit damage, and flat attack. You can build him as a pure glass cannon, and this level, not necessarily the best showcase for him, it is a good showcase for him of this is the type of damage that he can deal. So now that we've seen how his kit operates, let's talk about where he would be best at. Marksman, he doesn't really have a good place in there. We already see that he kind of deals low damage and execution damage, whereas the Marksman, it's kind of a lot more about your upfront and faster damage because they're flying enemies. They don't get stopped by anything. They can only be slowed at most. I guess they might be able to get stunned. I haven't really considered that. But I would only bring him in here for experience. In things like the insignia of the mages, he absolutely does perform well. However, again, the caveat is have a defender with him, have a fighter that can plug that gap, because your Osiren will probably not be one-shotting things the way that my fully decked out Osiren is one-shotting things. And I will be showing off a different raid to show what happens when he's not one-shotting things reliably. Endurance, he can be perfectly fine in here. Because of his higher cost, it can be difficult to get him out. So make sure that you prepare properly with healers and defenders. I would even say it's more important for you to get your defender out first before Osiren. That way that when Osiren comes out, his target is an easier sitting duck. One of the biggest complaints for Osiren, though, that a lot of players have is that because his damage is so backloaded, right? It's so based upon that puddle sitting there and ticking away at their HP. What other champion won't take advantage of a defender holding something in place for them? And I do agree with them, is that Osiren is kind of best when there are swarms of enemies or low HP enemies. He's an execution champion, so mentally you want to think about like the dogs. The dogs are going to run right through his puddle. However, if the dogs are even stopped for a second, their HPs are so low, he will kill off the dogs very quickly. Any of your trash mobs, like skeletons and whatnot, he will kill them off. So in Gear Raid 1, when we get there, I'll showcase him there as well. Insignia of melee attack. So there's this gimmick that as you're playing through the melee attack, and I haven't really shown this off on like any other champion, but there is one platform you have access to for a while, and the game intends... I did it again. The game intends for you to use it for a healer for your ground troops. If you have Osiren, and typically we do encourage players to work on your DPS champions first, especially like your AoE DPS champions. Osiren does have this hilarious gimmick that if you have him, like let's say you get Osiren and you love Osiren, right? This is going to be the video for you to, okay, this is how I use him to his greatest effects. But his cost of 25 can make him difficult to use, but not impossible to use. Here we can see that you can put a mage on this platform, and then the other 9 slots can all just be food. They can be food or champions that you're trying to get more experience to. Now, again, I have him with gear well suited beyond what this is. You will be able to figure out what that gear is for you on your account. But this is a nice effect, is that because his damage lingers, there are plenty of times where attacking one enemy leads him to killing off waves of enemies just from them walking into him. And I love it. I think it's hilarious.
Swallow the hardships. We will strike again.
We will strike again. So, moving on from the promotion raids, I don't think he is best in melee attack. However, if you have him at 6-star and you're farming for some of the lower insignias, that is where I would say he's funny that you could use him there. As you get higher up in melee attack, you do lose the platforms. When you lose the platforms, that's absolutely when you should be focusing on your fighters, by the way. And potentially, like, you know, ranking them up, blah, blah, blah. Guild Boss. I think Osiren is terrible for Guild Boss. I would absolutely never take him into Guild Boss. I would say the singular exception to what I just said is if Osiren was, like, let's say your first epic on your account. And I say it like that because you're guaranteed one of 4 piercing epics as your first epic. So after that one, if you pulled Osiren, and let's say you love, like me, I love the undead, I love pharaohs and stuff, absolutely up my alley. Yes, you could absolutely 6-star him immediately, and he will help carry you through the game. If he is one of your few 6-star champions on your account, yes, he's probably going to do more damage to the guild boss than a lot of other champions. However, if you compare him to like any single target damage champion, absolutely not. Those single target champions, they have faster attack speeds, they have more upfront damage. Those two in combination is going to put Osiren way behind, and Guild Boss never goes below 50% HP. I don't know how they calculate out everything in the game about enemies who have higher HP or lower HP when it comes to Guild Boss. I would just assume, though, Osiren already has other things making him bad for Guild Boss. He would not be great in Guild Boss. Contrary to that, though, in Tide, Osiren is absolutely amazing. And again, because of how easy it is to build him up, it turns him into an amazing platform champion because he is doing AoE. So as all the minions are running in, whenever he throws out his scythe, it is going to hit all of the enemies just running through that death zone. And their HP is usually very low. So if he doesn't kill them on the first hit, he's absolutely killing them on that second tick for that execution damage. Artifact Material Raid, in the starter areas, you do have less platforms. I don't know if I would use Osiren specifically here. He would not necessarily be awful, or if you were using him to hold off the minions as they are coming, they do have lower HP, so you realistically could use him to execute them off. However, the level does end once you kill Salazar. I don't think I would use him here. I would rather you use a single target mage off the platform like Novris or somebody, or Azoth, to try to burst down the boss in a more realistic time. It does depend, though. Again, if he's your 6-star champion, he could be fine here. The resource raids. So we're going to do a gold run here using Osiren rather than Comet. Now, Comet, I would say, is a critical part of my team for these gold runs. Actually, no. We can put you here.
I shall send the undeserving to the void.
So as you can see here, when we do not instant kill off targets, this is where Osiren definitely can have some large limitations. Is until the enemies get below that 50% HP, your damage is a bit unreliable, to say the least. But because his damage lingers, in a case like this, where the enemy nearly got through, And again, I want to stress, Osiren has my best of best gear on him right now. So no other champion is going to be hitting the high damage numbers that he is currently hitting. Alright, Volca, stop playing with your food. Kill him. So this is where absolutely having a tank, being able to hold things in place for Osiren is going to be best. But you can see he is doing plenty of damage to these goblins. And then specifically when they get below this 50% HP, they're taking decent damage.
Let me handle it.
We need to kill these guys off a little bit faster. So again, the strategy is let him throw Scythe, then use ultimate instantly afterwards. And here you can kind of stack the damages together. And there you can see, he cleared out all the trash goblins by himself. Again, this is a good showcase of where he does have limitations as well. He is not designed to kill these bigger HP, bulky boys, even with that 50% execution. It's just unfortunate that he's a bit slow on that damage. But his AoE damage, it is there, right? He is perfectly great in the experience raid because those minions are a lot weaker. They are meant for you to farm just for experience. So understand in the gold raid, which is where I showed him off at, those enemies have much higher HP values. So in the experience raid, he's going to be one-shotting everything by himself and could easily hold that raid by himself. So when we get to Gear Raid 1, this is going to be me doing my last little, like, in-level showcase for Osiren. I guess I don't even need to unequip you. This is one of the last places that Osiren is absolutely brilliant in. Now, there is an argument for Gear Raid 2 that Osiren can be good.
To the void.
Dance with me.
Is his ability here to be killing off these heavily armored units. So all these units are going to be resistant against your piercers and whatnot. But as we can see, he is going to output plenty of damage against all these enemies. And because he gets his ultimate so quickly,
Eternal nothingness is thy doom.
we can use it. Although there, it looked like there might have actually been a limit to how much damage he's doing. That's probably 10 enemies. He probably hits up to 10 enemies. But this is also Gear Raid 1, so nobody's ever doing Gear Raid 1 alone.
Your queen has arrived.
So on this wave, these guys are big, bulky HP boys. So I'm going to use Dolores' ultimate, which will help increase Osiren's attack. So I'm going to let him throw a scythe out first. Then I'm going to use his ultimate so that this ground fissure opens up. And here we can see he's hitting for 40,000 damage on all of these. Now, yes, he is needing the buff from Dolores. However, I would still argue that I have him built improperly. He's got a bunch of attack speed in his kit, where if I was building him to showcase him off at his best, he would simply just have attack percentage, flat attack, crit damage, and crit rate on him. And what makes that great is that you should be able to hit some very obscenely high numbers with him. But specifically here, you can see he's doing fine damage in here as my only mage in the party.
I'll serve you right.
It does not necessarily mean, though, that I think he can carry this content. For me, he was a second mage on the account to help me get through this content. And here with him having my best gear on, he's being serviceable, right? He's not doing the most damage, but by no means is he doing, you know, nothing. He's pulling his weight for sure. Here, though, he is attacking some of these other random mobs instead of attacking the boss, which means that that damage is not hitting the boss. For him being a cost of 25, that can be kind of egregious that if his scythe isn't hitting the target you want him to be hitting, you're missing a lot of that damage. And because of his high cost, we kind of talked about this with Titus, having that high cost and having your stats not hit the target you need them to can feel pretty terrible, to say the least.
Shall we dance?
But here he is doing plenty of damage. These bugs are magically resistant, so that's why he is not, you know, just annihilating them. But that's also why I have Nyx here. Is that she's designed to kill off the bugs.
How would I celebrate if I were still in human form?
And that's Deimos talking, that's not Osiren. So now for faction trials. How do I feel? Oh, I'm sorry. So Gear Raid 2, we could absolutely use him in Gear Raid 2. Because of his higher cost, I don't think this is the best place for him. However, we are constantly holding these enemies in place because that is their weakness. So with that being said, he is very serviceable in Gear Raid 2. Gear Raid 3, do not bring him. Again, only for experience. That would be the only reason to take him into Gear Raid 3. Faction trials. So for the basic trial has an advantage for you to summon 3 mages. So for that reason, I would say to bring him. He's not bad in the basic trial either. Is he great in the basic trial? Not necessarily. A lot of the things, they're not fast moving, but they are often moving. So against the stationary targets, Osiren will do his damage. But once they start moving again, he's kind of unnoticeable in that regard. There's kind of other mages at the moment that I would encourage before Osiren. In terms of his trial, he is a cultist. He does very, very well and does control the ground in the trial of the cultists. When that trial does come up, I have been giving him my best gear, and he's annihilating everything. He's doing his job so far. I think I'm up to like level 8 or 9 in cultist now. I'm at a point where I need to start bringing up other cultists to 6-star in order for me to push that content any further. So lastly, I'm going to talk about synergies for Osiren. So typically, again, any of the fighters specifically, or any defender, is going to help out Osiren, because if the target is stationary, that lets Osiren throw his scythe and do the most damage. However, there is one particular exception to this, and that is Jankar. Jankar has the ability, when blocking enemies, he applies a curse to them. Now, specifically, it's not Jankar, it is Jankar Awakening 1. Jankar, enemies afflicted by curse, will also be applied with a vulnerability to magic. Now, for those of you saying, well, yeah, but why not use Mary or Aeon for that exact same thing? It's that Jankar has this magic vulnerability, increasing the damage they take by 30%. I am still hoping to get Jankar on this account because he'll heavily synergize with champions that I already have, like Comet and others. I'm very upset I haven't gotten Jankar. I also like Jankar. I think he looks badass. Again, the undead Egyptian theme, and a lot of the undead Egyptians all synergize together really, really well. So Jankar specifically does have this ability that he can survive kind of longer by putting curses on enemies. A curse stops them from being able to attack for a few seconds. But then also that he's blocking them. And specifically Jankar, if we look at his block here, it's at 2. But if we promote him, it does increase his block up to 3. He's one of the few fighters that gets the ability to block extra units. That being said, What are some other champions that would heavily synergize with Osiren? Certain burst champions can do a great job because if they burst down the enemy, if they don't kill the enemy, Osiren is going to be the type that will annihilate them afterwards. Certain champions, I'm going to use Ardeth as an example. They have this realm of curse where they kind of put a puddle on the ground that deals damage in an area of effect. So you can kind of stack a bunch of these area of effects with like Ardeth and Cerberus. Cerberus is another fighter where you could stack up these ground effects so that anything that walks onto these grounds, they're just dying and melting instantly to a bunch of ticking dot damage. Obviously, mages like Mary, who have a slow in their kit, are going to provide kind of everything that Osiren needs, right? The increased damages from her passive, the dual vulnerabilities, and the slow that she provides has a massive synergy with Osiren, and everybody does get Mary on day 3. So unless you sold her away, you will be able to have a champion that will make Osiren look amazing. Even rare champions like Gonkba, or if you want to even go crazy and go Wagrick, Wagrick has a basic attack that has a slow on it. He can slow things down, and Gonkba, although he doesn't have a slow on his basic attack, his ultimate ends up slowing enemies down. So with that being said, you have this stacking dot damage of the two of them together if you want some extra mage synergy going on there. So ladies and gentlemen, that is Osiren. Again, the warning I have for you is that his high cost is going to make him more difficult to use, and because his kit is based upon executions, he is going to be kind of better for your early game to mid game. And I will admit that once we get later and later into the game, I feel like his damage does fall off because of how insanely slow his attack speed is. This doesn't mean that he's unusable, but definitely be cautious with how you use him, or pair him up with the right champions so that together they are doing a lot of damage and taking the best effect of his damage over time effect. I am hoping that in the future, Watcher of Realms, he either needs something extra or he needs an extra effect where, kind of like with his awakening, maybe if as he executes an enemy, he gains an extra attack because he has 2 scythes, right? And then you just don't let him use any more attacks until both sides come back to him. I don't know. It's a shame that he has 2 scythes and he only throws out 1 at a time. He's a great looking champion, really cool concept champion. Unfortunately, though, I will say he underperforms a little bit. Again, early and mid game, he's fine. As we get to late game, so gear raid 118 that I was just showing off, that is absolutely where he starts to struggle, and I would have a hard time encouraging people to use him after that point. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked the video, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. They are down below. If you want to support us over on twitch.tv/sprinklebeard, I'm over there and I like to interact with my viewers, so come hang out, come ask questions. But of course, until that next time, ta-ta.